There's a movement brewing, and that movement is the MeTotal lifestyle.
It centers around you keeping your sense of self intact and in gaining clarity of purpose as you age. I'm Kary.
I'm Joe.
I'm JM.
And we're on a mission to show you how to enjoy friends, fellowship, and life without substance dependence.
It's time to discover how you can begin living a MeTotal lifestyle.
Right here on the Fuzee-ish Podcast. Let's go.
Welcome to the Fuzee-ish Podcast, where we explore all aspects of MeTotal and the lifestyle that comes along with it and can be unlocked by it. For your reference, MeTotal stands for Excellence Through Temperance. And our guests today are none other than your main host, the crew. You've got myself, Joe Quattrone. You've got JMG, the one and only John Mike Guthrie. And you've got Kary Youman, the original crew. We are the rest in peeps, and we will be riding through this journey with you through however many hundreds of episodes of this we wind up creating. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us, Joe. Excited.
All right, so MeTotal is really what we're talking about here. JM, I know me and you had a lot of conversations a couple months back when we were trying to hash out what this feeling was that we were getting by having this alcohol-free lifestyle and what it's doing for both of our lives. But I'd love to hear from you a little bit. What does MeTotal mean to you, and why is it so important in your life, and why do you love being here right now talking about it?
No, I appreciate it, man. And, it actually kind of starts way back in the sense that when I decided to stop drinking, it was actually sort of random. It was I decided to do a Whole30 diet in September of 2021. And I realized, oh shit, I'm gonna have to stop drinking and eating ice cream at the same time. And that sounded like a lot. So I decided to give up beers for a month longer and prep myself for the ice cream abstaining, and ended up coming out of the Whole30 diet, dying for some ice cream, and actually okay not drinking. And here we are 500 and some days later, still haven't had an alcoholic drink, and obviously just so grateful for that. But as you guys know, we started to talk about what is this feeling? What is this life that we're living? We've all come at staying away from alcohol or abstaining from alcohol from different life directions. We'll talk about that another time. But my thing is, sober has such a stigma. The second you say the word sober or sober curious or sobriety, people immediately think you're in the 12 steps, or you went through the 12 steps, or you almost killed yourself in the car, or you hit your wife, or any of these things. And the reality is that didn't really fit for me. And so through these conversations with you guys and others, started to think about what is this life that we're living? What do we call the abstaining from alcohol that each of us are practicing? And there just wasn't any way to sort of really solidify or to define that life. And so, as you guys know, we went through a long process, and Jay Emanuel, our producer, was a big part of it too, sort of driving us to figuring out what is the mantra of this Fuzee-ish podcast. And obviously went round and around and talked about the different things that have been considered a component of sobriety or sober curious for the masses to this point, and ended up leaning into this teetotalism. And obviously, when you brought up teetotaler, I had no idea what that was. And what's interesting is talking to different people. There's lots of people that do know who teetotalers are. It's very prominent in really religious sects, both at more of an Orthodox Jewish level, and then when you get into like really evangelical Christianity, Southern Baptists in particular, there are people that like to say they're a teetotaler, and basically what that means is they're straight edge, right? They don't consume any sort of toxin into their body, and obviously, we decide to potentially indulge in other things to sort of take the edge off, and so that didn't really fit for us. And I think the thing that really sort of hit for me is we all started to talk about how important relationships are. And the thing that really hit around relationships was there's no way for me to really have the level of empathy that I want to have for you guys as my brothers, but also my wife and my kids and my family, and even the colleagues that I work with that from time to time you don't have the best relationship. You can't have empathy for them, good and bad, if you're not cool with who you are, or at least who you're trying to be. And so there was this moment where where we were talking about ourselves and me as a component of that. And obviously we don't want to be selfish. Selfless is really a big component of who at least the three of us are trying to be in our lives. But the reality is we can't have that empathy without starting with ourselves. And so I think, Joe, you were the one that said, well, what if we kind of took a riff on teetotal and called it MeTotal or MeTotalism? And man, if there could be a light bulb at that moment, that hit for me. I know it hit for Kary too. And what's cool is that's now a few months ago that we sort of started to go down the MeTotal path, but there's no doubt in my mind, and I'd love to hear your guys' perspective, that when people start to talk to me about this and I'm able to share the story of MeTotal and watching the light bulb go above their head, that this is a real thing, that this is the life that we're living, and that it really does personify who we want to be as people and the message we want to start to share to this community. And ultimately, I think really help people to understand it's okay to not drink. There's a lot of benefits that come from it, and you can still be successful both from a social and professional perspective, even without alcohol in your body. So just really excited to finally get going on talking about this outside of our close-knit circle.
Yeah. So for me, I'm glad you brought up the straight edge thing and the 12-step program, because that's the thing I've definitely been grappling with. Like I don't feel like I've ever really identified as like an alcoholic, but I've definitely had some medical issues with alcohol, and that's why I had to cut it out, as well as just like different life stage. As a parent, I just don't want to be drunk. I don't want to be hungover. I don't want my kids to see any of that stuff. And then I think more importantly, the more and more me and you talked about it and decided to kind of go on this journey together and bring Kary in on this podcast, because we're all kind of from the same part of the world and we all have very similar kind of career paths and stuff like that. The thing that really stood out to me was there's not only are there tons of people that are alcohol free, but tons of very successful people that are alcohol free. And you wouldn't exactly know it because Hollywood and corporate America don't really put alcohol free up on a pedestal. Most people, all they know about people that are alcohol free or sober is just what you see in the movies. They're just people that are designated drivers or they're squares or whatever. And I actually think it's like, I think some of the most successful people out there have a very healthy relationship, like an arm's length relationship with alcohol. And that's what I wanted to tell the stories of. How do we figure out a way to shine a light on the fact that alcohol is pretty much one of the most toxic things you can consume, and there's a better way to live your life. I think about that statement that we had kind of come out with, like when we first started marshaling our energy around MeTotal. To me, it kind of stands for this idea of excellence through temperance, right? So not necessarily full temperance, like, if you're out there consuming cannabis or you've got other means of like taking an edge off, like as long as it's got more holistic healing properties, I'm all for it. As long as you're actually tempering the way you seek to have psycho reactions or whatever, psychedelic reactions, I think that's fine. But I really just like the idea of taking care of yourself and trying to live up to become the best version of yourself you can be for everyone around you. So that's kind of my testimony, if you will, as it pertains to MeTotal. But Kary, when I wasn't there exactly when JM started filtering some of these messages across the text message airwaves out to Portland, but what was going on in your mind when you started hearing these things?
Yeah, I love how you just consolidated the whole thought into excellence through temperance. I really love that. And I feel like when JM first mentioned MeTotal to me, I'm like, what does that even mean? I didn't know what teetotal was, so I didn't really have a reference point. But as he started to dive in a little bit deeper, it truly resonated for me in so many ways. And it's funny because I feel like our dynamic, when you think about the alcoholic or someone who's choosing to live an alcohol-free life, I think between the three of us, we literally are like version 1, 2, and 3. Like I think the full extreme is between the three of us. And I definitely, I wasn't beating my wife or crashing my car, but I was doing just about everything else, So for me, I definitely identified with the traits of an alcoholic. But when I went the path of 12 steps or some of these more traditional sort of recovery paths, I didn't feel like I was in the right room, because although I knew alcohol was toxic, there was something in my brain and something in my mind that just didn't resonate with the messaging. So I think when I heard MeTotal, it was really just a way for me to not only take that power back, but I start thinking about like, what is MeTotal for me? And for me, MeTotal is, you know, my meditation practice. It's something I've been talking about a lot lately is you hear a lot of people talk about sobriety, but rarely do you hear about recovery. Like being sober is one thing, but recovery is building that fellowship. It's building community. It's creating new accountability points to really deepen your relationship with your community and with yourself. So for me, when I think about MeTotal, I think about that commitment to not only better myself, but how can I pour back into my community? How can I be a bridge and share my journey of just choosing to have a clearer mind as I'm moving through the world? So for me, I got really excited about the possibilities of taking something that, I'll just say this, JM and I were talking, and I think at the end of the day, there's still a lot of people who don't identify as being alcoholics, but are still looking for like a place where they can rest their laurels. And I feel like MeTotal it's a movement that I think a lot of people are going to identify with, because right now I just feel like there's only extremes. And I think there's a way for us to utilize MeTotal as sort of a gathering place for people who are on this journey.
A lot of the smart psychologists that you hear, or the news outlets out there that you're listening to in relation to what you just said, Kary, would refer to that relationship with alcohol as the gray area. You don't quite have a 12-step type problem with alcohol, but you know, there's something there that you're probably going down a little bit of a dangerous, slippery slope.
100%. Yeah, the gray area drinker. I think I did read an article or so the other day, and yeah, to your point, there seems to be a large portion of our population who just sit in that area. So interested in exploring.
I was definitely a gray area drinker. For years and years, I ran big, huge beer portfolios for Gary Vaynerchuk over at VaynerMedia. When you live that lifestyle, when you're running a multi-million-dollar business and your client is in the beer business, there tends to be beer around you more often than not.
Could definitely see that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the cool thing is, to your guys, both of your points, the reality is there's just not a good community to talk about this, right? So the second you get into a conversation or you're talking to somebody that maybe has noticed a change in you as a person or the lifestyle that you're living, and what does that mean? You know, what is it? What have you been doing? What is it that you've changed? You know, a lot of what we talked about early on as we started to pull together the thinking of this podcast is, what do we center the conversation back on at the end of a 30-minute interview? And I think what we landed on is there's lots of ways that people are able to sustain this alcohol-free lifestyle, right? And for some people, and Kary, you touched on this, some people it's a practice like meditation, or it's a practice even as far as really devout religion, right? So even if they're not teetotalers, there are people that are very faith forward that use that faith and that basis foundation in religion to drive themselves forward to try to be the best person that they can, and maybe not drinking is part of that. There are others that exercise or that are working towards an Ironman or a triathlon or even just a 10-miler or 5K, doesn't matter, that feel like their health benefits by not drinking give them the best ability to tackle or to achieve what they've put out as a goal specific to something like that. For others, there's actual products, right? So alcohol-free AF beer AF, keep talking about that, right? Non-alcoholic beers are for real. They're out there. There's lots of them, dozens of different brands that are pushing alcohol-free beer to the market because there are people like me that just like to have a beer at the end of the day. Doesn't have any effect on me or my mindset, and unfortunately doesn't have the alcohol in it because I would appreciate that alcohol. But at least it gives me the cessation of alcohol on a daily basis or every few day basis if I want to have a beer. And that's a big deal. And so the cool thing about MeTotal is it doesn't matter how you're getting there, whether it's a practice, whether it's a product, whether it's some combination of various things, whether you're taking the edge off with something like THC or some cannabis edible, or even, maybe having a little toke off of a pipe from time to time, or a pharmaceutical for that matter that takes the edge off, because there are people that are prescribed these drugs that, use that for the same thing. Reality is we don't care. We want to be all inclusive. This is a world, a community, a place that we want to talk about the benefits of not drinking. And that can be not drinking at all or drinking a little bit less or what have you. Again, there's no specifics or rules to this.
1 second, real quick. Let's just clap it up for the fact that there are hundreds of alternatives to alcohol for being alcohol free. When I first started to basically started to abstain from drinking alcohol, it was like O'Doul's and that was it. Right now, there's hundreds of non-alcoholic beer products, and I'm a beer drinker. I don't drink liquor. I never drink. I never really was a big liquor drinker. I was never really like a big I hate wine. So going alcohol free, the hardest thing for me was beer. And now there's literally dozens, if not hundreds, of alcohol free beer products on the market. So I'm just going to clap it up.
Snaps, all that. Yeah, I'm here for it.
O'Doul's. Oh, man.
O'Doul's, Sharps, this stuff's gross, man. I don't like that. Now I can get my IPAs and I can be satisfied. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? But Heineken Zero is really good. Like, I actually think Heineken 0.0 might taste better than a real Heineken. And I mean that sincerely. And
it's not it's a high bar to hurdle.
No, it's not. Fair enough. I still see a super, heady triple IPA, cloudy, hazy, lactose milkshake, any of those things. My mouth is watering. But the reality is to be able to have something that at least cuts that cessation right away is a big deal, and something that I think allows people like me that don't necessarily have that practice in my life that kind of centered back to, that's the thing that assists, and that's the cool thing. It can be any combination of those different aspects of our life.
I think also more almost as importantly is that they're making them in a way in which they kind of mask the fact that they even are alcohol free. So a lot of it is psychological with people. It's just the fact that they want to have something in their hands when they're around other people. And they don't necessarily want to be drunk or have the hangover afterwards, but they do want to look like they fit in with everybody around them, specifically at a wedding or a holiday party or something like that. So now that there are so many options, you find them in so many places, you don't actually feel like you're missing much. I went to a wedding very recently. I went to holiday parties. I went to a holiday party in Chattanooga back in December, and there was 13 non-alcoholic options on the menu at a regular bar. And this bar's open to the public at 365, and they had 13 non-alcoholic options that weren't just like Coke and Pepsi.
Okay, yeah, that's pretty impressive. I can appreciate I guess you would call it a decaf beer, but I think for me, I don't know if I ever really enjoyed
Beer AF.
I don't know if I ever truly enjoyed the taste of beer until much later in life. I would just drink to get to the other side of that. My appreciation for beer didn't happen until later on, but one thing that I have appreciated is you've been seeing more of these CBD components, like CBD in kombucha, CBD in different beer, and I've really enjoyed that. I think there's just a medicinal component that really does take the edge off for me. It tastes good, and yeah, again, it's just another way for people to take the edge off. So it's been cool to just see more introduction of CBD and other products in these drinks.
Have you guys had a chance to talk to people about MeTotal? Have you had an opportunity either with a friend or somebody that's a colleague, or any sort of good stories about how those conversations have gone?
I mean, I talk about it pretty regularly with a lot of different people. I think they're definitely receptive to it. I'm definitely talking to people that still imbibe, so they haven't necessarily gone on that walk like I have. So I don't think they'll fully get it until they do. But I don't think they're very long for drinking in the first place, because most of these people are aging up. They're getting into their late 30s, early 40s. So if they're not there yet, they will be soon. But I think everybody, what it does, at least for them, is it gives them some understanding of why I'm doing it, right? It allows me to kind of have an open and honest dialogue and have people not feel sorry for me. The last thing I want anybody to do is feel sorry for me and think that I'm, less of a person than I was when I was drinking, because that's not the case at all. I'm more of a person than I was when I was drinking. And I think by explaining what MeTotal is, it allows them to understand that, hey, there's more important things to me, like my faith and my children and my wife, that I'm going to focus on right now. And I'm going to take alcohol and I'm going to put it over here. And I'm not necessarily going to destroy people if that's what they choose to do in their life. I mean, my wife still drinks, a lot of my friends still drink, and that's their choice. And I'm supportive of them. And whenever they do want to decide to go in a little bit of a different direction, I'm here to help support.
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing that. The only thing I was going to say is, JM, you asked, what have people said? And I think the biggest thing, kind of going back to sobriety versus recovery, when I talk about MeTotal, people light up because it sounds to them like we're trying to build we're building a community, like we're building a space where people can really highlight and show that, because I'm choosing alcohol free, like you said, Joe, doesn't mean you have to feel sorry for me. Like, life is better because I made this decision. And I think as you have more people showing that you can live a life without alcohol and still have fun and still really thrive, I don't want to say any names, but if there were big celebrities who were, instead of promoting big alcohol companies, and they started promoting just products that really have a holistic impact on your body, I just feel like you would really see a shift in the dialogue around like people go out to drink, like they go out to drink, like what if we went out to, like, I don't know. I guess I try to imagine like the Super Bowl without alcohol. Like, I think for some people, it's not even a thought. And again, it's not that we're saying don't drink alcohol, but in my mind, I'm like, what would reality be like if people could go to something like the Super Bowl and not feel like they had to literally drink 25 beers to enjoy the game? You know?
Yeah, I've been to the Super Bowl and I probably consumed about 15 beers at the Super Bowl.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. I haven't been to the Super Bowl, but I've watched it and I know for sure I've had that many beers.
Yeah, I mean, so the reason that I ask this is because I have been observing the people that I'm talking to about just my life, right? So people will ask, especially with some of the success that's happening on the career side, people are just asking how things are going and are interested to sort of understand better. Are there things that you've been doing? Are there ways that I can be thinking about my life, both personally and professionally? And the reality is, going back to the sober thing, if I just said, oh, I'm sober, immediately they're like, oh, I'm out, right? Like I'm not here for that. Like, I'm here for the 25 beers at the Super Bowl. I'm here for the glass of wine with my wife when I get home. I'm here for the neat martini that still has the ice in it. And all those things I'm here for that too, by the way, but we'll come back to that. But the reality is the ability to talk about, well, I made some personal decisions because of the relationships in my life starting at home that I needed to achieve a better connection around, and realized that drinking had been something that that did have, to Joe's point, control of me. So you start talking about, so I've started this brand and we're working towards this product, and now I've got my friends and my brothers from like early on in my life, and we're talking about what it's been like to not drink or be alcohol abstaining. And then we hired a producer, and he challenged us to bring some sort of central aspect of this conversation to our podcast, which is the product or practice that people, use to be able to achieve the day over day of abstaining from alcohol. And then he said, what's the mantra? And we went through this whole process and we talked all about it. And there was just really nothing, which is so exciting. Think about that. Just all the content and all the concentration and all the different things that are going on in this world that you were just consumed by and just getting hit by from every direction. There is nobody out there talking about this in a way that is inclusive, in a way that allows people to be real to themselves and to this community about where they're at. Nobody's here to judge you. Nobody's here to say we're better because we're not drinking. Nobody's here to say Joe's is not as cool in this community because he had gout and had to do it from a health reason, versus our boy Kary, who's Mike Tyson heavyweight and needed to just put it down. Or in me, wherever I am in the middle. This is inclusive. This is about a world that we believe is going to have less alcohol in it. And we want to create a community where it's comfortable to talk about it. And so the reason I say all this is every conversation I get in with the woman who works at the front of this office building, with the friends that I have through my kids' baseball and other sports, the people that I work with at Authentic, the people that I see on a daily basis in the various aspects of my community. When we start talking about this, they light up, Kary. Just like you said, it's like, oh my gosh, there is another option. There is a place that I could potentially go to feel comfort and solace in the fact that maybe I'm questioning alcohol myself, but don't feel like there's a place to talk about. Think about that. Think about the responsibility of that. And think about just the amazement of the fact that there is no other place that's really pushing this type of conversation and this type of community to help people. This is what we're here for, right?
If you think about it, JM, like think about straight edge. You mentioned that up the top of the conversation. Those people, and you got to love them as well because they were living a MeTotal lifestyle. But the way they chose to project that was with an X on the hand. And to me, what that signifies is don't talk to me. I'm
right.
I'm self-selecting. I'm out of this conversation. These are my people over here. I think the conversation needs to be much more of, instead of an X, more of a circle. It's do talk to me. Do come and ask me what my life is about, because this is a life that is admirable. And this is a life that should be exalted, if you will. Like, I think more people should strive to live a life like this, not, hey, I'm over here in this club and I'm just hanging out with my buddies and we do this and you don't. So unless you plan on coming over here and doing this, then I don't want to talk to you. I think we inherently should pick up the baton and try to talk to people about it, because you know, the thing that kind of drives me a little bit is now the more and more I research the science behind alcohol, the more and more I'm like, damn, how did we ever get ourselves to the point where we let society, you know, to me, it feels more like tobacco, you know, like, I don't know if this is something that's going to be sustainable for another 50 years, you know? So I want to have as many conversations as I can with people and just offer up the alternative in a very positive and uplifting way.
Yeah. And I'll be honest, I think that's right. I think that the difference is alcohol is in all aspects and facets, and it doesn't have like the direct tie to cancer the way that cigarettes did. And there's a million things we can talk about that. And the reason I say all that is that's great. And I'm excited to be part of that too. But for me, this is about helping people to feel the way that I feel 500 and some days later. I had no idea that you could feel the way that I do without alcohol. I didn't. I thought that was part of my life. I thought that going and having a drink after work with my colleagues was the right thing to do. I thought that when I took a client to dinner, having a martini and a couple of glasses of wine, that was the real deal. That's how all, you know, professional people act and behave. And that's what success really looks like. And guess what? It doesn't. Like, it's cool. I'm here to support people that want to continue to practice that lifestyle and consume alcohol in the ways that they do. God bless them. And I hope the best to them as well. What I'm here to do is say, there is really another world to this. There is another reality, and it is something that can truly make you feel the best you ever have personally and professionally because of that conviction and because of the fact that it really does have an impact on your DNA, just the way that you're made up on a daily basis. It's a chemical, and there's
think about it this way,
a reaction.
It may not have the same effect as like a tobacco does and a linkage to something like cancer. Although I would say that's not exactly true, because people back in the day used to die of liver disease all the time. It just so happens that doctors have been consulting you out of alcohol more and more. And then over time, people age out of alcohol more and stop drinking it. They aren't dying from it as much. But the thing that I think is most prescient about this is that you may not die because of alcohol, but if you don't get it under control, you're going to have way more regrets in life than you should. And every old person I talk to, every cliche you ever see is one of the last things you want to have hanging over your head before you leave this earth is a ton of regret. And so that's one thing that I would espouse to as many people as possible. If there's things that matter to you in life, don't let alcohol ruin those, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's powerful. I just want to piggyback. You both have just said a lot of really great things, but Joe, you said something just a couple ticks back where you're talking about the straight edge community and the X's on the hands. I went through a phase for about a month in my youth where I was like, I'm going to be straight edge. I'm done with all this stuff. And I put these X's on my hands. And it was interesting because there were people I was around, and it was a pretty hardcore environment. And like, I kind of compare it to someone who may be, let's say like maybe a hardcore vegan, or just someone who's taking this alternative path. And what I found sometimes in these communities is, again, the intention is in the right place. Like, they're trying to better themselves. They're trying to tap into the best version of themselves. But I think sometimes through that process, people really do start to isolate and create this sort of superiority complex to where it's like, I don't eat meat, I don't drink alcohol, I don't smoke, I am legitimately better than you because I don't do these things.
Exactly.
And what's really powerful about this MeTotal community and this movement is, back to your point, JM, inclusivity is huge. You know, you think about, I'm not going to talk about any particular religious leaders. But, if you think about some of the leaders or prophets in the past, like those people truly did create a space for everyone to walk in, to be who they are. And I think just with MeTotal, us choosing not to drink alcohol doesn't mean in any way, shape, or form that we're trying to demonize people who drink alcohol. Like we can't sit at a table with family members and pour a glass of wine for them if that's what they want to do.
That's right. So when we start talking about the data, I think that's all going to prove itself. But here, we're here to show you there's a community that cares. There's a place that you can talk about it. There's a place that you can be a little bit vulnerable about the questions that you have specific to your consumption for whatever reasons those are. And we're going to support you. And we want to provide you a platform to understand and learn from other people that have been in this path for a long time and haven't had a good way to tie it back either from a mantra perspective, right? Because the reality is, as I think about these last 2 years, one of the things that really comes to mind specific to what Joe just mentioned in regards to showing up for the people that you care about, I got 3 kids, 8, 5, and 3 years old, at a really vulnerable age where they are looking to their parents for the model of who they're going to be next. And that's a huge responsibility. And we could go down a real tangent on this. I believe that's what we're on this earth for, right? Is to be people that support the next generation of people, whether we're fortunate enough to have them as our own, or we're supporting them from a mentorship perspective, or if we're supporting them from some sort of, stepfather perspective, doesn't matter. Reality is our job is to make those people better than we are. And that starts by being the best model that we can be. And part of being the best model is that you are there. You are present. You are 100% in it at all times. And guess what? I was not in it. I was drunk. I was flustered. I would get like a weird temper and want to even feel like physical towards my children. There's a bunch of things that I could tell you about that even just a couple of beers put me on the tilt of. And the biggest thing is I didn't remember. There would be things I would just forget. There would be meaningful conversations with my kids that I wouldn't even remember, and they would bring them up, and it killed me to not be able to remember exactly what we had talked about. Guess what? 2 years of this, I remember everything. And that has benefits across the board. That has benefits in keeping myself showing up for the things that matter, like moving my body 20 minutes a day and trying to eat fairly well and obviously not having a drink today. But man, does it matter? My kids are seeing it. They are recognizing it. There is a different level of relationship and conversation that we have, and they are telling other people without me even making it a big deal about beer AF. My dad doesn't drink real beer. He drinks fake beer. Like these are all things that like really matter and that are just happening organically. And it's because of the community that I have, which has really been the two of you to talk about this over 2 years and some other people that have been great mentors. But man, it has made the biggest fucking difference. I'm a better person. I can say that with 100% conviction and no doubt in my mind and no sort of skeleton in the closet that's keeping me from feeling like I'm really showing up with 100% today, just like I did yesterday. And some of them are better than others. But as long as I stick to my mindset of making today better than yesterday, things are moving along and the good things continue to sort of come from the decisions that we're making as a group.
Well, that's a good point. And for the listeners out there, JM, why don't we just kind of do a little bit of a roll call on how many days or years each of us has been alcohol free, just to kind of ground everybody and kind of like what perspectives we're coming from. Because I think, Kary did mention earlier in the show that there is a spectrum represented here, which I think people will start to get a reflection on once they see how long we've been abstaining. So JM, how long have you been alcohol free?
Yeah, so I'm like 540 days or something. It was August 20-something, 2021, coming up on 2 years. A guy I talked to on a weekly basis said after when I hit a year, like, congratulations, but now you got the rest of your life. And it continued. That was so true because I was fighting towards that 1 year and now it's the rest of my life. And as cliche as it sounds and as aligned to even the 12 steps as it sounds, it really is a one-day process. You focus on each day, you focus on doing better the next. And so far, so good. Pumped about the two of you being part of this journey with me, because certainly it's been an incredible inspiration and fortunate, as I mentioned, to have a number of people in my life too that have stopped drinking for a bunch of reasons for a long time. Some people 20 years, and talk about just the benefits that it's had for them. Those experiences are invaluable and keep me hungry to keep going.
Cool.
That's
I'll go
incredible,
next.
JM.
The next
Congrats,
on the
man.
ladder, I guess you could say, and I'll be celebrating 5 years.
You are the lightweight, though. We already.
I'm the lightweight,
do
so
need
it probably wasn't as hard.
How many days is that? How many
Featherweight.
days is that, Joe?
Featherweight. Joe.
5 years, 360 something. We're probably talking about like, what is it? 365 times 5. I don't know. I'm bad at math. Somewhere near 2000.
16 something?
I think it's more than that because you got 65 times 5 also, so you're close to 2000, I think. But anyway, so yeah, 5 years almost, and I actually don't miss it at all, one bit. There's nothing I can't do now that I could do back then. If anything, there's just more capacity, more capability, more fun, more social engineering, more everything. That's why it's MeTotal. That's why it's a total thing. It's a plus feeling. It's not a negative feeling at all. And
think about that for a second, what you just said. Imagine if you could quantify the amount of time that you've taken back by not consuming something that literally inebriated your brain. Think about that. Over those many years, how many minutes, hours, potentially days you have gotten back to be a productive person in your personal wellness in society. That's pretty fucking crazy, right? I mean, it's amazing.
And that's the number one reason why I did it, because I'm a person that's pretty aggro about being productive. So I don't like things that make me unproductive. So I'm probably like mid-tier on the ladder. I was definitely the lightweight of the crew, but I was definitely just to ground everything. Even though I was a lightweight, I was still in a gray area consumer of alcohol. I was definitely headed down a pathway that was not sustainable. Kary, you are the granddaddy of them all. How long have you been alcohol-free?
Kary Youman.
It's just inspiring to hear.
The heavyweight,
hear you guys
man.
share.
Mike Tyson, here he is.
I had my last drink December 26, 2011. So that was 4,070 days ago. And the only thing I'll say about that is, to what you were saying, JM.
That's a minute.
It's a couple minutes, man.
Yeah.
I just remember growing up, like, not really seeing a lot of positive examples of people consuming alcohol down the long run. And I know how I was raised. Like, I love my family, but there definitely was some toxicity that just came from alcohol influence. And I think for me, like, at 29, like, something in my brain just shifted where it's like, yo, like, what kind of parent do you want to be? Like, how do you want to show up? Like, what's your legacy going to be? And at the end of the day, like, if you can find a way to transcend alcohol, like, you're going to add so much more time to your life. So making that decision, it was tough. It was really tough. But yeah, 11 years later, I have nothing but gratitude. And by far still, when people ask me, what are you most proud of in life? I just say recovery, sobriety.
Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy?
I've done a lot of things, and that is the thing.
Isn't that crazy though? And like that's the and even that's like that's the outlier, right? That's the thing that people aren't most proud of because they're not able to even do it. And I think that's the thing that even from some people that were probably my biggest doubters or naysayers through this process, they say, you know, Zach Casagrande, big part of our group and a guy that comes from the Reston sort of origin, like the rest of us, he said, you know, you were already a good dude way back. For your whole life, you've been a good dude. But man, these 2 years, you're not only a good dude, but now you've been able to do what 99.99999% of people, including me, are unable to do. And that's prolific, right? Like that's the reality. This is not easy. And so that's not a suggestion at all. The suggestion is, here is a group of people and here is a platform for us all to get a little bit vulnerable about what that really means because of the way that society makes this just a known commodity and part of this world. That, hey, maybe there's a better way, and maybe there's a way to think about it differently than the 12 steps that feels more inclusive. Because I'm here for it.
Interesting, because I think where Zach is going with that statement is very real to me, because I think a lot of people spend their entire life trying to figure out how to give back to society in a way that's authentic to them and never find out a way to do it. You know, like maybe they're not people that are overly religious, so they don't want to volunteer in that way. Maybe they're not people that are big into philanthropy or don't know what kind of philanthropy to get into, so they don't get into it that way. But with this, we've stumbled across something that's so core to our essence that we can do every day. And I think it's just incumbent upon us to take technology into account and take our potential voice in a movement like this to help as many people as humanly possible.
Yeah, I mean, Kary said legacy. Like, what a cool word, right? And legacy can mean a lot of things for a lot of people and be different in a lot of capacities. And the kids part I mentioned earlier is certainly part of that to some degree. But legacy is actually leaving the world in a better place, right? Not just the people that are directly tied to us. And that's a huge responsibility that I think we've found our way into this position to really impact the world in a way that is looking for it. As I mentioned, there's just not a lot being talked about specific to the life that you can live without alcohol as part of it.
I fully expect 100 years from now, the history books to say, yeah, once upon a time, human civilization did consume things like tobacco and alcohol. But with things like the MeTotal movement, that kind of stamped all of that out and ushered a new era of human civilization to the forefront.
Yeah, a more natural way to have this feeling, right? Exactly. A more natural way to feel the way that people are trying to feel, both through mindset as well as, if there's other substances that you choose to consume, we're not here to judge you on that either. We're here to support you.
Right. Any last parting sentiments before we wrap up this episode, gents?
I'll just say I'm super stoked to be on this MeTotal journey with myself, with you all, and with the listeners. So yeah, really excited to be on this ride with you guys.
This journey is the WeTotal journey. So.
Yeah. Oh, I like that.
WeTotal.
It's our click. All right. WeTotal.
All right.
Yeah. All right, cool. I'm super excited to be just able to talk about something that I feel so passionately about in an open and vulnerable fashion. And I'm hopeful that we can create a community and a foundation for people to feel comfortable to talk about something that doesn't necessarily feel comfortable today, going back to that sober stigma and other things we've talked about today. And if we do that, we've really made a difference and we've had success, and whatever comes from that, obviously we look forward to, but also really kind of are able to quantify the responsibility of that to some degree too, because this is a heavy topic that we're stepping into.
All right, folks, it's come to be that time in the show where we talk about MeTotal in a completely different direction. And because this contingent of folks is really into the feet heat of it all, what's going on in the lower hemisphere of our bodies, now we're going to do a sneaker check. And we're going to talk about that all-important, encompassing thing that drives most of this crew's, MeTotal lifestyle. So on my feet today, we are featuring the New Balance 2002 Rs in the gray on gray. And I'm a very big fan of New Balances in general. And I definitely appreciate a wide shoe because I think it lets my MeTotal flag fly a little bit higher. So JM, what is riding on your feet today?
What is riding on my feet today are some Dunks, SBs, kind of a Dodger blue.
And how did those Dunks make you feel like you're living a
we've talked about this, or we will talk about this some more. When I stopped drinking, buying shoes was a big part of what I was up to. So yeah, I mean, shoes are my thing. I love Nike in particular. So you'll find some J's or some Nike Dunks on my feet most of the time. I've got a couple of fancier ones. Yeah, checks over stripes, no doubt.
Kary, what's riding on your feet these days, or at least for this episode?
Yeah, I'm in the old home office, so I had to grab my shoes. Yeah, but I got out of the gym. I got these
the Nobles.
I hear it's a CrossFit shoe. I don't do much CrossFit, but they're really good to me in the gym, and I really like the color palette. People,
they're doing a lot of cool matchy patterns and stuff. Yeah, I love that.
I really feel connected with the floral motif you've got going on in the head. That does it for this edition of Feet Heat meets MeTotal. And thanks for joining this episode of the Fuzee-ish Podcast. It's our pleasure to bring you insights from our walk with MeTotal. And we'd love to hear your stories. Feel free, if you're on YouTube, to go ahead and subscribe and click that little bell so you can actually receive notifications from us. And if you're consuming this podcast from any of the major podcast platforms, go ahead and subscribe. And we'd love to hear a rating and review from you at some point. Until next time, I'm Joe Quattrone. See you later.